Okay, so I'm going to focus on learning objective 3, which is using word parts to understand the meaning of words. And this section is all about how you should break apart big words to its smallest meaning, the origins of the word. Sort of what I talked about, how there's English comes from various origins. And if you notice, words that sound similar, look similar, are similar for a reason. And that's what this section is all about. So, for example, think about the word thermometer. It's got two parts, therm and meter. Okay? And when you see the word thermometer, you can think about other words like words with therm, such as thermos, thermal underwear, or thermostat. And what do these words have in common is that they all have the same root, which is therm, which means heat. A thermometer measures heat. A thermos controls heat of a liquid such as coffee. Thermal underwear keeps heat in. And a thermostat controls the heat in a room. But it's all based on the same root, therm, which means heat. Okay? And then you can even think of meter, such as the metric system. What's a meter? A centimeter, a millimeter, a kilometer. So you can make an educated guess that a thermometer measures heat. Okay? Words in English are primarily made up of Latin and Greek word parts. As I said in the word origins presentation, that is the case. Anglo-Saxon words are the most basic words, are the words you probably already know. So these longer words that are a little bit harder usually have a Latin and Greek roots. So prefixes are added to the beginning of the word, and suffixes may be added to the end of a word to create more specific meanings. So it might have the same root, but what changes the meaning will be a prefix at the beginning or a suffix at the end of a word. So a prefix is a word part at the beginning, and the prefix pre in the word prefix means before. It comes before the word. So for instance, you may have you may have been required to take this reading course as a prerequisite to other courses that require a significant amount of college level reading. You might be required to pass the reading course before other courses can be taken. And that's what a prerequisite is. It's a requirement before you can move on. So here are some commonly used prefixes that represent a quantity. Bi means two, like in bicycle. Tri means three, like triangle. Dec means 10, like in decade. Cent is 100, like in century. Kil is 1,000, like in kilogram. And mil is also 1,000, like in millimeter. Okay? And here's some prefixes that represent time. Ante is before, like anterior. Post is after, like postpone. Pre is before, like prerequisite. Re is again, like reapply. And retro is backward, like retroactive. Sort of like your word retrospect, right? Backwards. Looking backwards is what that word means. And here's some prefixes that show direction or relationship. So A, B, and A is away from, like asymmetrical. AC, AD, AF, AG, AS, AT all mean to or toward, like a credit. Okay? You have co is together, like cohabitate or co-teach. Circum is around, like circumference, circumstance. D is down, like decline. And ES, E, and EX are out, like exterior, excerpt, things like that. And here are more prefixes. Inter is between, like interstate. That's a highway between states. Intra is within, like intravenous needle goes in. Per is thoroughly, like perspire. Pro is for or forward, like pro bono. Sub is below or under, like a submarine. Sim and sin are together, like symbiosis or synonym, those words that go together. Super is above or higher, like superpower. And trans is across, like transmit, transatlantic, things like that. Okay, now here's a bunch of prefixes that mean not. A and an are not, without, and means asymmetrical, is not symmetrical. Anti is against, like anti-terrorism. Dis is opposite or not, like disrespect, you're not respectful. L before L is not, like illiterate, you're not literate. M before B, P, or M is not, like immature, you're not mature. In is not, like insecure, not secure. IR before another R means not, like irresponsible, you're not responsible. Miss is wrong, like misplace. Non is not, like non-profit, so a company that's not for profit. And un means not, like unpredictable, so not able to be predicted. Okay, so those are just examples of prefixes. Now, every word has a root, and the root is the base of a word. Okay, that's where the meaning of the word originates. So becoming familiar with several roots will really help you build a large vocabulary. So beyond prefixes, the root holds a lot of the meaning. So here are some roots. These are roots that represent feelings or emotions. You got cred, which means believe, like incredible. Like you can't believe that it's unbelievable, is another way to say that. Path is feeling, like empathy. And I went over empathy at the beginning of the year. Empathy is a feeling that you can feel what other people feel. Patho is a disease, like pathologist, a scientist that studies diseases. A phobia is a fear, like xenophobia, agoraphobia, arachnophobia. Some other roots that represent motion or action are cap or capt is to seize or to take, like captive. Duck or duct is to lead, like educate. Fact is to do, make, like manufacture. Port is to carry, like export or transport, which would be to carry across. Spect is to look, like spectacular or retrospect, looking backward. Tract is to pull, like tractor. Tort is to twist, like contort. Verse and vert are to turn, like reverse. So reverse is turning again, is what that means. Here's roots that represent communication. You have audi is to hear, like audition. Dict and dict, to speak, to tell, like dictionary. Graph or gram both mean to write, like telegraph. Mit or to send, like remit. Phono is sound, like phonograph. Scrib and script are to write, like prescription, which is something you write before you get the medication. And voc or voc is to call or voice, like a vocation. Calling. That's where that word originates from. Here's some other roots. Side, to kill, like homicide. Fur, to bear, like transfer. Luke and lum, to shine, light, illuminate, is an example of that. Ology, study of. Spur, breathe, inspiration. Tel means distance, like telephone. And vita and viv is life, like vitality. And suffixes. Now, suffixes are the part of the word that's at the end of a word. And here are examples of suffixes, like ans for resist would be resistance. Advocate would become advocacy. Differ is difference. Impose becomes imposition. Patriot becomes patriotism. Graph becomes graphite. Mature becomes maturity. Move becomes movement. And well becomes wellness. And all those form a noun, okay? And these form a noun that is related to a person. Like a refer is a referee. Teach, teacher. Actor, librarian. Okay? So the suffix really mostly changes the form of the word as opposed to the meaning like a prefix or root does. Okay, now these suffixes make verbs like luxury becomes luxuriate, characterize, simplify. Okay, they become verbs. And then able and able makes it capable of. So if you're respectable, you're able to be respectful. If you're reliable, you're able to be relied on. Full and os means full of. So if you're successful, you're full of success. If you're courageous, you're full of courage. And less is without. So if you're hopeless, you're without hope. So if you look at the chart below, if you had audiologist, if you put it together, audi is sound, ology is study, and ist refers to a person. So an audiologist is a person that studies sound. Okay? So you can do revitalize on your own. Okay, so hopefully that's what you got. Okay? To feel full of life again. Something similar to that meaning. Okay? And also don't forget, there are visual clues. So there's context clues, there's word parts, and sometimes an author will give you a visual, like in this one. The student seems vexed as she tries to study. So by looking at the picture, we can determine that she seems very anxious to study. Okay? Now the idea is to apply all of your new vocabulary strains. That's what this is about. I know there were a lot of roots and prefixes and suffixes that were just presented, but the idea is to use them as a reference, and these are in your textbook, so that when you're going to figure out unknown words while reading, you can look at these charts and really get to know the roots and prefixes. It's really important to building your vocabulary, and you really open up an immense amount of words by understanding these prefixes, roots, and suffixes. In addition, using context clues help you build all of that. It helps you build the knowledge of, oh, I know what that word means. Now here's a word that sounds like that word. So keep that in mind as we are working towards building new vocabulary while reading.